Thank you very much. President Tajani, Vice Presidents, President Juncker, Commissioner Hogan, distinguished leaders of the political groups, members of the European Parliament, dear friends. I want to say that it is a really great privilege to be the first speaker in your series of debates with heads of government on the future of the European Union. Mr. President, I believe that the European Union is at a decisive point now in our history. Despite all of the upheavals in recent years, the rise of populism and Euroscepticism, nationalism, anti-democratic forces, we meet today in solidarity and with a renewed sense of purpose. The European ideal has always been inspired by a spirit of optimism and a belief in a better future. And while that ideal has been tested, it hasn't been broken. And based on the achievements of the past, we have a renewed appetite to face the challenges of the future. Back in 1947, representatives from 16 countries met in Paris to discuss how, in the words of Jean Monnet, they could resist economic decline and preserve political freedom. En 1947, des représentants de 16 pays sont réunis à Paris pour discuter la manière dont, selon les termes de Jean Monnet, ils pourraient résister au déclin.
In 1947, we heard, in the words of Jean Monnet, the importance of resisting economic decline and preserving political freedoms. Ireland was one of those 16 countries, and we came to see the wisdom of Jean Monnet's predictions that there was no future for the people of Europe other than in the Union. And this became clear shortly afterwards. Small countries played a significant role in the development of Europe. During the 1950s, Joseph Bech from Luxembourg, who was an important architect of integration, also played a significant role in creating the European coal and steel community, and also by holding the Messina Conference in Sicily. When asked about the presence of European politicians who had this meeting in Sicily in 1955, a leading British politician dismissed this by saying that they were simply taking part in archaeological excavations. However, these excavations then went on to provide the foundation for the Treaty of Rome. We can see the strength of the European legacy through personalities such as Konrad Adenauer and Hans-Dietrich Genscher. They had a vision for reconciliation and integration in Europe that was so important. We can see this in the work of Helmut Kohl and his beliefs as well. He saw the importance for equality amongst smaller countries as well. We can also see this through the vision of Jacques Delors, who believed that there needed to be a deeper meaning to Europe, a soul for Europe. Otherwise, the whole project would fail. He worked in creating a single currency for Europe, the euro, and that is a very significant legacy. His challenge to all of us is that we have to provide greater meaning to Europe now.
The promise of a better future has motivated people to work for the European ideal since the very beginning. And speaking in this chamber today, I'm reminded of one of the greatest figures in Irish politics, and indeed one of the greatest figures in politics from Northern Ireland, John Hume, whose birthday it is tomorrow, and who served as a member of this great Parliament for 25 years. John Hume spoke many times about the symbolism of the bridge not too far from here, connecting Strasbourg to Kehl, just across the border in Germany. He spoke how easy and ordinary it was to walk across that bridge, and given Europe's dark history, how remarkable and profound that ordinariness was. In the European Union, John Hume saw a model and a vision for how a lasting peace, however improbable, could be fostered and built. And he saw how that model of people working together with a shared purpose and endeavour, spilling their sweat instead of their blood, as he put it, could provide an inspiration for my own country. Today, there is a peace bridge crossing the River Foyle, bringing together the divided communities in John's native city of Derry in Northern Ireland, a bridge that the European Union helped to build. Dear friends, it's hard to imagine the Good Friday Agreement being made without our shared membership of the European Union and its single market. And in Ireland, we are now having to contemplate our future without that foundation which underpinned it and made it possible. That's why the government which I lead has been so determined to protect the Good Friday Agreement in all its parts and all that flows from it. And it's why we've insisted that there cannot be a return to a hard border on our island, no new barriers to the movement of people or to trade. And it's why we're so deeply grateful for the remarkable solidarity and support from other member states. It is everything we hoped for and proof positive of why small countries benefit so much from membership of this union. And so the Irish people are profoundly grateful for the unswerving support of this Parliament. And in particular, I want to thank your President, Antonio Tajani, your Brexit coordinator, Guy Verhofstadt, the leader of the EPP group, Manfred Weber, and all of the other political groups that have been so supportive. The solidarity of the Parliament has been matched by the Commission and the Council. And I'd also like to extend my thanks to President Juncker, to the lead Commission negotiator, Michel Barnier, and also to Council President Donald Tusk. The European Union has consistently recognised the unique position of Northern Ireland and the unique situation in which it finds itself given the decision of the United Kingdom to leave the European Union, a decision which, of course, we respect. Notwithstanding that, the majority of people in Northern Ireland voted to remain in the European Union. The majority of the representatives elected to the Northern Ireland Assembly want to remain in the customs union and the single market. And it's likely that the majority of people living in Northern Ireland will remain European citizens after Brexit because of their unique status under the Good Friday Agreement, which allows them to be British citizens, Irish citizens, or both. The breakthrough achieved before Christmas means that the United Kingdom has guaranteed that whatever the future relationship with the European Union is, a hard border on the island will be avoided, and the common travel area and all the associated rights that flow from it will be maintained. As the negotiations move forward into phase 2, we'll continue to rely on your support and solidarity as we work to ensure that what has been promised in theory is delivered in practice, and there can be no backsliding on this. So it's important that these commitments are fully reflected in the legal text of the withdrawal agreement and firmly embedded in the UK's future relationship with the European Union, whatever shape that ultimately takes place. And for my part, I hope that the new relationship that exists between the United Kingdom and the European Union is as close and as deep as is possible, but consistent with the need of the Union to protect our internal market and customs union. Mr. President, I was born European and am part of a new generation of political leaders who were born after our countries joined the European Union or its predecessors. We treasure what has been achieved and share the vision of the founders for further integration and cooperation. While I've always lived with the benefits of European membership, I've never taken them for granted. I very much value what was hard won by past generations and what they sacrificed for us. That vision delivered peace in Europe and opened the door to peace and prosperity in my own country. These values of solidarity, partnership, cooperation, which are central to the European project, have brought Ireland from the position of being one of the least developed member states when we joined the Union to one of the most prosperous today. And for us, Europe enabled our transformation from being a country on the periphery to an island at the centre of the world, at the heart of this common European home which we helped to build. The promise of Europe unlocked the potential of Ireland, and it allowed us to take our place among the nations of the world. So, along with other member states who've benefited so much from the European Union, I believe we have a particular responsibility now to lead on the future of Europe debate. We have much to offer and also much to give, and I firmly believe it is our responsibility and relish the opportunity. So I think we should approach, all of us, the debate on the future of Europe with a positive attitude, talking about what we want to achieve for our citizens rather than what we want to block or resist. Many of the policy challenges we face are increasingly global, and they cannot be met by nation states acting alone. Issues such as uncontrolled mass migration, climate change, cybersecurity, international trade, the regulation of medicines and major corporations, many of whom are now bigger than states, cannot be solved by 28 countries coming up with 28 different solutions. In unity there is security, in cooperation there is strength. As we say in the Irish language, Níneart gur le céile, there's no strength without being together. So we should, I believe, welcome those who aspire to and who are ready to take on the responsibilities and obligations of membership. The prospect of membership of the European Union can be a powerful motivator for those who seek to build peace and freedom and prosperity and democracy in the Western Balkans. And these countries, I believe, should be given a pathway to membership. Mr. President, I believe that in the Europe of the future, all European countries and all member states will be small states, even though perhaps they don't realise it yet. And you only need to look at the list of the top 60 cities in the world in terms of population. Only one of the top 60 is in the European Union, and it's currently getting ready to leave. And in terms of population now, there is only one country in Europe that's in the top 20 in the world, and its population is falling. So in a global context, we are very much now a union of small countries. And I know the population doesn't equate to economic power or military strength, but there can be no doubt that these are also shifting east and south globally. So I think we need to stick together if we're to protect what we have and continue to export our values and worldview. A Europe worth building is a Europe worth defending, and with the launch of PESCO in December, which Ireland was pleased to join, we are coming together to answer new threats in an inclusive way. The threats we face in the 21st century include cyber terrorism, international terrorism, uncontrolled mass migration, natural disasters, drug and human trafficking, and we want to be involved in European actions against all of these. We definitely can't do it on our own. My country also has a very proud history of military neutrality, participating in UN peacekeeping operations and EU common security and defence policy operations, and we are not members of NATO. So we will participate in PESCO in a way that is consistent with those traditions, as other countries will too. President, I believe the Europe of the future must do four things. First of all, we should continue to do what we currently do well. Secondly, we should focus on the big new challenges facing Europe and its citizens. Third, where appropriate, we should devolve some powers back to member states, municipalities and regions. And fourthly, we should engage more with citizens in direct democracy. Ireland, as you know, has moved from being a net beneficiary of the EU budget to one that is now a net contributor. Nonetheless, we're open to contributing more, but only if it's spent on things that contribute to the advancement of the European deal and the European project. For example, structural funds for Central and Eastern Europe, to enable them to unlock their economic potential as we did. The European Union should also continue to fund well programmes and policies that work and have stood the test of time, such as the Common Agricultural Policy, and providing funding for research, innovation, Erasmus, Interreg, and the European Investment Bank, among others. Budgets for these, in my view, should be protected. Europe can do new things, and Europe should do new things. But new programmes require new money. Ireland is a founder member of the Euro and a founder member of the Single Market, and we were among the first to open our labour market to Europeans from Central and Eastern Europe. We now want to see the completion of the Single Market and the Digital Single Market, and above all, a single market that serves the interests of all our citizens and not just corporations. So I want to commend this Parliament on the work it has done to make the lives of Europeans better by removing roaming charges on mobile phones within the European Union. That helps bring people together. Your recent action on credit card charges. And likewise, I commend the way you've championed air passenger rights and your plans for Interrail. Now is the time to fulfil the promise of the single market in other areas. For example, take financial services, insurance, mortgages, loans, so that people can get cheaper loans from European lenders and insurers if needs be. And I'd ask the Parliament to work on this in the period ahead, and I think it's something that would very much be welcomed by our citizens. I also believe we should work much more closely on the cost of medicines, and new innovative medicines in particular. This could save billions for taxpayers, freeing up funding to ensure that modern medicines are available to patients at the same time in every country, and countries are not played off against each other. So let's pool the buying power of 450 million people to do so. I also believe in more free trade agreements with third countries and in completing monetary union. And I believe in a banking union to protect citizens' savings on a pan-European basis and reduce exposure to individual member states. And I also think that a capital markets union would provide the building blocks for an integrated capital market across Europe. In terms of improving democracy within the EU, I support a Europe-wide list for the European Parliament. I'd like to get people in cafes in Naples and restaurants in Galway talking about the same election choices. Perhaps that's an ambitious idea, but I think it's one we should strive for. And I believe we should also make permanent the Spitzenkandidat system and democratise the choosing of candidates for other leading positions within the EU. And let's establish as well a common asylum policy and system to replace the current system, which we all know is not working. Too few countries have shouldered the responsibility of providing refugees with a fresh start in Europe. We can all do more, and we must. And let's put fire back into the engine of our social Europe by following through on the proclamation that we issued in Gothenburg last year on jobs, employment rights and pensions, among other things. Whatever our future holds, Europe needs to be competitive economically. And one of the ways to ensure this is by allowing competition among member states. And I think this is particularly important for peripheral and less developed countries whose domestic markets are small and need inward investment. My strong view is that national taxes that fund national budgets should be determined by national parliaments and governments. But equally strong is my view that corporations should pay their fair share of tax, and we cannot tolerate a situation where large companies avoid paying any taxes anywhere. And that's true for American tech companies, as it is true for European car manufacturers and international aerospace and defence companies. Ireland has already taken steps to close loopholes in our tax laws, and we'll do more in the years ahead. But we strongly believe this should be done on an international basis through the OECD, as Europe should not give advantages to our competitors on other continents by acting unilaterally. Mr. President, as a community, we must also look outwards, offering leadership and partnership, especially when it comes to Africa, a continent which is only 8 kilometres from Europe. And I believe that Europe must show much greater leadership on Africa, and I support the idea of an EU Marshall Plan for that continent. We've already witnessed the terrible impact that chaos in Syria and Lebanon has had on people in those countries and its impact on Europe. Libya and Syria are small countries. Imagine what would happen if similar events were to unfold in massive countries with massive populations like Egypt or Nigeria. The consequences are too awful to contemplate for us and for them. By contrast, we can look east to Asia and the successful development of those countries in East Asia who have transformed themselves from countries to which we gave aid to countries with which we now trade. So in the 21st century, Africa must succeed. It's in our interest and it's in theirs. So let's make it part of our mission as Europeans. I also strongly support the subsidiarity and proportionality task force. It's interesting to me and for many of us who travel the world that on many matters and many issues, US states and Canadian provinces and even counties and municipalities have greater autonomy and greater variation among themselves than EU member states currently have. So do we have the balance right? Not always. And does everything have to be harmonised and standardised? I don't think so. So, Mr. President, in making decisions, I think it's vital that our citizens are engaged. In Ireland, we've launched a national debate, a citizens' dialogue on Europe, and our starting point is to focus on the hopes and dreams of our citizens. Led by our Minister for Europe, we're undertaking a series of regional meetings and other initiatives across the country between now and Europe Day on the 9th of May. And I strongly encourage other countries to do the same. President, it's been an honour, a great honour, to be the first European head of state or government to speak to the European Parliament on this hugely important topic of the future of Europe. All of you, across all political groupings, have enormous political experience, insight and knowledge. There is a mass of wisdom in this chamber, and also imagination. And I believe it's the perfect place to debate our future as we move forward and to ensure that into the future that parliaments and governments are more connected to each other. I know that under the guidance of President Tajani, you've already started to discuss the issues in a thoughtful and productive manner. And even before the Commission's white paper, you adopted 3 resolutions on our future. I hope that this first debate in this series and the others to follow will be lively and spontaneous. And I look forward to engaging with you during the course of this session. The European Union has always offered the promise of a better future. It is a future that will not be handed to us. We must work to create it. We can achieve a more perfect union, and we can speak to Europe's soul. Our values like peace, friendship, freedom, justice, opportunity and cooperation are the values we're committed to in advancing in Ireland, on the island of Ireland, within our European family, and in our relations in the wider world. Europe has been a great success, and we owe its achievements, peace, individual rights, equality before the law, prosperity, to that political creativity and the friendship that we've built together. I believe that Europe is the outcome of one of the greatest acts of political creativity in human history, and that same creativity and vision of the founders should drive our work today. The European ideal took flight in the second part of the 20th century, when people imagined a world joined by mutual interest, trust and affection, replacing one that was torn apart by jealousy, fear and animosity. Building on the great successes and achievements of the past, I believe that with our imagination, with creativity, with courage, we can provide a soul and a heart for Europe, creating opportunities for all of our citizens, and we can ensure that the European ideal that took flight in the last century will soar in the 21st. Mr. President, I want to conclude with a few words in the first official language of my country. Credum Gurvi an Spirit Yerfach, agus.
I believe that the positive spirit and the belief in creating a better future is what has always inspired the European ideal. If it wasn't for Europe, our country would not be present on the world stage. We are grateful to European member states for their solidarity and for the help that they have provided us with during Brexit negotiations. This is proof of how small countries benefit from EU membership. We now have the opportunity to imagine the future of Europe. And I want to continue with the progress that we are making and focus on the new important challenges. I want citizens to be more engaged in direct democracy. I hope that Europe will show more leadership as regards Africa. I support the idea of a Marshall Plan for Africa. As we add to the success of the past, I believe that with imagination and with courage, we will be able to give Europe a heart and soul and create opportunities for all citizens. Thank you.
Taoiseach, thank you very much for your speech. The large majority of the European Parliament is happy. Now it's very important for us to know that the first reaction by the President of the European Commission, Mr. Jean-Claude Juncker. Jean-Claude, you have the floor.
Mr. President, Taoiseach, ladies and gentlemen, to be very short, I couldn't more agree. That as Mr. Farage is. But I have to deliver a speech because the disappointment would be too big if I wouldn't do so. I'm delighted, that's what I wanted to say, that I'm delighted that my good friend Leo comes before this House today. And I would like to thank President Tajani and the Parliament for holding this timely debate on the future of our Union. This is the first of the kind and the first of many, I hope. Since he became Prime Minister, Leo has proven to be a committed European. I knew it before, but he has proven it now, being where he is for the time being. It is fitting that today we remember with sadness another true Irish and European statesman. I would like to pay my personal tribute to Peter Sutherland. He was the first ever commissioner to receive the gold medal from this House. I was deeply saddened to hear of his passing. Peter Sutherland was a proud Irishman, another giant of European politics, and a friend of so many. He will be missed, but his legacy lives on. As Peter in the past shaped our policies of today, so can we shape the policies of the future with the choices we make today. It was less than a year ago that I presented to you the white paper on the future of Europe, 5 possible scenarios for our project. Since then, the debate has picked up in all corners of Europe. The white paper set a new approach: debate, not dictate. And the white paper and the different scenarios are still inspiring the debate across Europe. However, the future of Europe cannot remain a scenario. The time to take decisions is now, because citizens will head to the polls in May 2019, and in doing so, they should have a clear understanding of how the European Union will develop over the years to come. Last September, I therefore presented to you my very own vision for a more united, stronger and more democratic union. A union where solidarity and responsibility go hand in hand in all policy areas, from migration to the banking and monetary union, from energy to our common budget. A union where the rule of law is not optional, but the very basis of everything we do, from implementing decisions jointly taken to preparing enlargements. A union of equals, where the euro and Schengen, the most visible expressions of European integration, continue to unite our continent. Since the publication of the White Paper, a lot has happened. The Commission has organised hundreds of citizens' dialogues, important, 6 of them in Ireland, and I'm happy to see that the Taoiseach himself has launched citizens' dialogues on the future of Europe across Ireland, from Galway to Dublin. This is how it should be. To succeed in Europe, we have to put an end to this eternal artificial opposition between the Union and its member states. Our Union can only be built with our member states, never against them. And this is why your invitation of national leaders to this House, President Tajani, is so important. I'm delighted to see the commitment from the European Council. It has agreed the leaders' agenda, 17 summits in the next 18 months on the road to Sibiu, Hermannstadt, to chart our common future. This is even more than we had at the height of the Eurozone crisis. But with one important difference. This time, we are not repairing the burning plane while flying, as we had to do it during the crisis. Instead, we are now fixing the roof of our European house while the sun is shining. We know what we need to do together: completing our economic and monetary union, securing our borders, delivering on our social agenda, making our tax system fairer, reforming our asylum system, getting back to Schengen, and completing the digital market and the energy union. In all these talks on Europe's future, I have been privileged to have a close working relationship with the Taoiseach. And there is no better example than we worked during the first phase of negotiations with the United Kingdom. When it comes to the issue of Ireland in these negotiations, Europe is united. It is all for one and one for all. The Commission and the Irish government worked tirelessly, side by side, to help us reach the sufficient progress needed to move on to the next phase of the talks. This partnership will continue, and this partnership will grow stronger as we work on the future of our Union at 27. I read with pleasure Leo's speech at Citizens' Dialogue last November, when he set out his vision for, I'm quoting, a Europe that continues to do well what it does well, that focuses on big things and that, where appropriate, devolves some power back to member states, municipalities and regions. For me, this is more than just a beautiful poem. These are the essential questions we all need to answer when going into the negotiations for the next European budget. This debate on the budget will be an open and honest discussion, and one that goes right to the heart of the debate of the future of the European Union. If we want the European Union to be more than a single market, nothing not more than a single market, then a single small budget will be sufficient. But if we want a European border and coast guard to protect our external borders, or European civil protection teams to help in case of floods or fires, then the answer is simple. Member states must put their money where their mouths are. Only one. Sehr verehrter Herr Präsident, genau weil diese Zukunft...
President, precisely because all of these future issues now need to be tackled, we have proposed that under the leadership of Vice President Timmermans, there will be a task force on subsidiarity and proportionality. In the next electoral campaign, then this will not much will change. Very few have the courage to stand at mass rallies, to stand up on a public square and defend European politics and policies. Everybody just goes to the people and says Europe is doing too much, but there are areas where Europe has to do more. And I've mentioned some of those. There are other areas, however, where we do need to withdraw. where there is too little added value. And other efforts which do not actually achieve anything, where our efforts do not fulfill objectives that could be achieved at any time in the near future. Now, I'm told that the European Parliament will not take part in the task force. I think that that is a crass mistake. We need the European Parliament when we're talking about what competences should be or could be sent back to the member states. Then of course this is a key debate, and of course we need to see what we can do better. We might talk about new competences as well, but our homework is to try and get some order into the whole mess of competences between member states and the EU. We need to have a proper re-evaluation of the current situation, because that is not in the interests of the European Parliament or the European Commission or the representatives of the member states. The European Parliament cannot allow us to deal with this alone.
Since 1999, the Good Friday Agreement has preserved peace and enabled progress where there once was bloodshed and discord. We all know that peace can be fragile, and I see no more important use of our new budget than guaranteeing and financing the peace process in Ireland. This is an unconditional European commitment. This is what the Commission will deliver with our proposal for the next multi-annual financial framework in May. Our new budget must be as ambitious as the goals we set ourselves and as flexible as possible to adapt to new and unforeseen challenges. Our future cannot wait. Together with Leo, with the Irish and with others, we'll swim in that direction. Thank you.
Grazie, Jean-Claude.
Thank you, Jean-Claude. I don't believe we were mistaken when we decided in Parliament not to take part in